My daughter once looked me in the eye and told me to serve her husband or get out of her house. Imagine that, your own flesh and blood, treating you like a servant instead of a father. I thought I had seen betrayal before, but nothing cuts deeper than when it comes from the one you raised with your own hands. At night, I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I only smiled. Then I walked away, leaving behind not just her house, but the last piece of trust I had in her. But what she didn't know is that my leaving wasn't weakness. It was the beginning of something she would never forget. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. And now, let me take you back to where it all began. I never thought I'd see the day when my own daughter treated me like a burden, but that night it happened. I was standing in the kitchen stirring the pot of stew. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air. I had spent the whole afternoon preparing it, hoping it would remind Clara of the dinners I used to make when she was a child. Back then, she would run into the kitchen, tug at my sleeve, and ask, "Dad, can I taste it first?" Those memories kept me going as I set the table. Clara and her husband Derek walked in just as I was placing the breadbasket down. She looked beautiful, but her face was hard, her tone sharp. "Is this ready yet?" she asked, without even looking at me. I smiled, trying to keep things light. "Almost, sweetheart, just a few more minutes." But she didn't answer. She just sat down, scrolling on her phone like I wasn't even there. Derek followed behind her. He didn't even take off his jacket before sinking into the chair. He glanced at me, gave a short nod, then started tapping his fingers on the table. No greeting, no warmth. I tried to make small talk. "So Derek, how's work going?" He didn't even lift his eyes. "Busy," he muttered. That was it. Clara didn't look up either. She was too busy typing on her phone. The silence in that dining room felt heavier than any classroom I had ever managed in my 30 years as a principal. Finally, I brought the food out. I filled their plates first, like any father would, and sat down quietly with my own. Derek dug in without a word. Clara ate slowly, still staring at her screen. I tried again. "Clara, this reminds me of the stew your mother used to make. Remember how you loved it as a little girl?" She rolled her eyes. "Dad, can we not do this right now?" Her words stung. I bit my tongue and forced a smile. But it didn't stop there. Halfway through the meal, Derek leaned back in his chair, holding up his empty glass. "Wine," he said, as if I were some waiter. I looked at him for a moment, trying to decide if he was joking. But no, his face was serious. His eyes cold. Clara glanced at me and then at him. "Dad, get him the wine," she said, her voice firm like it was an order. My hand tightened around the fork. For a second, I thought about refusing. I thought about telling him to get it himself. But instead, I stood up, walked to the counter, and picked up the bottle. The glass felt heavy in my hands. My fingers squeezed the neck of the bottle tighter than I should have. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I forced my lips into a polite smile. I poured the wine into Derek's glass like nothing was wrong. "Thanks," he said flatly, not even looking at me. I sat back down, staring at my plate, my food untouched. In that moment, I felt like a stranger in my own daughter's home. Like all the years I worked, the sacrifices I made, the nights I stayed up worrying about her future, none of it mattered anymore. I swallowed hard, hiding the storm that was building inside me. My daughter had chosen him, and in choosing him, she was pushing me further away. That night, I told myself I could endure it, that I could hold it all inside, but I was wrong. Because after dinner, while Derek stayed lounging in the living room, Clara followed me into the kitchen. She waited until I set the dishes in the sink. Then she spoke in a voice so cold it cut deeper than anything Derek had said. And what she told me in that moment, it changed everything. As I stood in the kitchen rinsing the plates, I heard her footsteps behind me. "Clara," I turned, half expecting her to thank me for dinner, or maybe even smile the way she used to. But when I saw her face, my heart sank. There was no warmth in her eyes, only coldness. She folded her arms, leaned against the counter, and said, "Dad, we need to talk." My hands froze on the dish. I dried them slowly, waiting. "All right," I said, forcing calm into my voice. Her next words cut me deeper than any insult Derek had thrown at me. "Derek feels uncomfortable with you here. He thinks it's not good for us, having you live under the same roof." I stared at her, trying to process what I had just heard. Uncomfortable, I repeated. Clara, this is my home too. I bought this house, every wall, every brick. She interrupted me with a sharp tone. That was years ago. Things are different now. You're retired. You don't work anymore. Derek is the man of this house. You should respect that. Her words hit me like a slap. Respect Derek, the same man who couldn't even say thank you. The same man who treated me like a servant at my own dinner table. I tried to reason with her. Clara, I gave up so much for you. Do you remember the nights I worked double shifts, the summers I spent driving a delivery truck just so I could pay for your first car? Do you remember how proud you were when you drove it out of the driveway? Her face softened for a moment, but only for a second, then her eyes hardened again. That was then, Dad. Now things are different. Derek and I, we need space. If you want to stay here, you need to make him comfortable. That means doing what he asks, serving him when he needs something, or you should leave quietly. Her words echoed in my chest like thunder. Leave quietly. My own daughter was telling me I didn't belong. I felt my chest tighten. My breath came shallow. I had faced angry students, furious parents, even school board members who wanted my job. None of them ever made me feel this small. Only my daughter could. Before I could respond, Derek walked in. His timing was perfect, almost like he had been listening the whole time. He slid his arm around Clara's shoulders, pulling her close. A smug grin spread across his face. So, he said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy, have we made things clear, Leonard? We just want peace in this house. You can help us, or, well, you know your options. He didn't even try to hide the smirk. It was the smirk of a man who thought he had won. I looked at both of them. My daughter, the little girl I once carried on my shoulders, now standing beside a man who disrespected me at every turn. My hands trembled, but I didn't let them see. Instead, I smiled faintly. A small, quiet smile. Clara tilted her head. Dad. I nodded slowly, keeping my voice calm. I understand. She seemed relieved, as if she thought I was surrendering. Derek chuckled softly, tightening his grip on her. But inside me, something shifted. In that very moment, as I stood there with their eyes on me, I made a decision. I would not fight them in anger. I would not argue, or shout, or beg. No, I would play the part they wanted me to play. Quiet, obedient, invisible, for now. But deep inside I had already set something in motion. A plan. They thought they were pushing me out of my own life. What they didn't know was that I had far more control than they imagined. And soon enough, they were going to learn exactly who they were dealing with. That night, I went to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. The house was quiet, but inside my head it was loud. My daughter's words kept repeating, like a hammer striking the same spot again and again. Serve Derek, or leave quietly. I stared at the old shirts folded neatly in my drawer. Some of them were older than Claire's marriage. I had worn them to school when I was principal. I had worn them at graduations, shaking the hands of students I had guided. And now, here I was, folding them again. Only this time, I wasn't moving on to something better. I was being pushed out. I started packing slowly, one shirt at a time. I tried to keep the sound down, but the silence of the night made every rustle of fabric sound louder. When I stepped into the hallway with my bag, I found Clara standing there. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, just watching me. She didn't say a word. Her face was blank. Cold. I tried to catch her eyes, to see if there was even a trace of the little girl who once hugged me after school. But she didn't flinch. She didn't move. She just stood there, almost as if she was making sure I actually left. Clara, I whispered. Are you sure this is what you want? Her lips tightened. For a second I thought she might cry, but then she looked away and muttered, it's for the best. The words stabbed me. For the best. For who? For her. For Derek? Certainly not for me. I bent down, zipped the bag, and walked past her. I wanted to reach out, to touch her shoulder, to remind her of all the nights she ran to my bed after a nightmare. But she stepped back, avoiding me. That small move broke me more than any argument ever could. As I reached the kitchen, Derek was there. He leaned against the counter with a smirk, pretending to yawn. He even stretched his arms wide, mocking my slow movements. "Need help carrying that bag, old man?" he asked, chuckling under his breath. I ignored him. My hands shook as I pulled the house key from my pocket. It felt heavy, heavier than it should. That key had opened the door for me for years. It had been a symbol of home, of safety, of family. Now it was nothing more than a reminder of rejection. I placed it gently on the counter. The sound of metal against wood echoed through the room. Derek's grin widened. "Good choice," he said, as if he had just won a game. I didn't respond. My throat was tight, my chest heavy. I picked up my bag, turned toward the door, and stopped. For a moment I looked back. Clara was standing at the edge of the hallway, her arms still folded. She didn't move. She didn't come closer. She didn't say goodbye. When our eyes met, she turned her face away. That was it. That was the last image I carried of her as I stepped outside. The cold air hit me immediately. It stung my skin, but strangely, it felt cleaner than the air inside that house. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could breathe. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking. Each step was heavy, but each step also carried me farther away from humiliation. Away from Derek's smirk. Away from Clara's cold eyes. But inside me, there was no peace. Only a storm. My daughter had chosen him over me. She had forgotten everything I sacrificed, everything I gave up, everything I built for her. As I walked into the night, I promised myself one thing. They might think they had won. They might believe I was gone for good. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because no storm stays silent forever. And when mine broke, they would feel it. I didn't go far that night. I just walked. Street after street, until my legs hurt. Finally I found a small run-down building at the edge of town. The kind of place most people would ignore. A week later, I was moving in. It wasn't much. Just a modest apartment with cracked paint on the walls and a single squeaky bed. No pictures, no warmth, just silence. But strangely I felt more at peace there than I had in Clara's house. At least here, no one looked at me like I was a burden. I remember sitting on the floor with a cup of cheap coffee. No furniture, no noise. Just me and four bare walls. For the first time in years, I could think. And the more I thought, the more the pain turned into something else. Something sharper. A few days later, I started reaching out to people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old colleagues, neighbors who still remembered me as Principal Leonard. They welcomed me with kindness I didn't expect. Some even invited me to dinner. Their warmth reminded me of who I used to be. One evening, I sat with Martin, an old friend from my teaching days. He looked at me across the table and said, "Leo, you've been through hell. But don't forget, you're not powerless." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer. "Your wife's property. The one out by the lake. Don't you still own that?" I froze. It had been years since I thought about it. After my wife Helen passed, I couldn't bear to visit the place. Too many memories. Too much pain. So it just sat there, untouched. Martin continued. "You know, most men would give anything to have land like that. It's worth a fortune now. Don't tell me you've forgotten." His words sank in like a knife. Of course I remembered. But what struck me harder was something else. Clara. She knew about that property. She always had. And suddenly, it all made sense. She didn't just want me gone, she wanted me out of the way, so that when the time came, everything would slide into her hands, smooth and easy. That thought stung worse than the night she told me to leave. Because it wasn't just rejection anymore. It was greed. My own daughter, the girl I sacrificed for, wanted the life I built, without me in it. I sat back, my coffee untouched, my chest burned, not with sadness, but with something stronger. Martin must have noticed the change in my eyes. "What are you thinking, Leo?" I gave him a faint smile. "I'm thinking, maybe it's time I stop letting people decide my worth." When I got back to the apartment that night, I pulled out an old notebook. My hands shook as I flipped through empty pages, but soon I found a pen and started writing. Ideas, names, steps. At first it was just scribbles. But then the lines grew clearer. A plan was forming. If Clara and Derek thought I would fade quietly, they were wrong. Very wrong. I looked at the bare walls around me. In that moment, they didn't feel empty anymore. They felt like a blank canvas. This wasn't the end of my story. This was the beginning of something else. My face hardened as I closed the notebook. They had no idea what was coming, and I wasn't going to warn them. A week later, I was sitting in my small apartment, flipping through my old notebook when my phone buzzed. It was Martin again. His voice sounded different this time, serious. "Leo," he said, "you need to see something. Come by my office tomorrow." I didn't sleep much that night. My gut told me this wasn't just a friendly chat. The next morning, I went to see him. He was already waiting, papers spread out on his desk. He tapped the pile with his finger. "These are legal documents, Leo. Your name's on them. But look at the changes." I leaned forward, my eyes scanning the pages. At first, the words blurred together. But then I saw it. Clara's name. Not mine. Not Helen's. Clara, the property deed. The house by the lake, she was trying to transfer it into her name. My throat tightened. This can't be right. She can't do this. Martin's jaw clenched. She already tried. Met with a notary months ago. She claimed you wanted her to manage everything, given your old age. He almost spit the words out. I froze. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Clara, my own daughter. She hadn't just asked me to serve her husband. She was planning to erase me completely. Martin slid his phone across the table. "There's more. I shouldn't show you this, but you need to know the truth." On the screen were screenshots, messages between Clara and Derek. My hand shook as I scrolled. Clara, "He's useless now, just old baggage sitting around." Derek, "Then get the papers done. We don't need him dragging us down." Clara, "Once it's in my name, he'll have nothing. He'll leave on his own." My vision blurred. For a second, I thought I might collapse right there. My daughter. The child I carried on my shoulders. The little girl I stayed up nights working 2 jobs for. The same girl who cried when I gave her the keys to her first car. That girl, now calling me useless. Old baggage. I couldn't breathe. My chest ached so badly, I pressed my hand against it. Martin's voice broke through. "Leo, are you all right?" I swallowed hard, forcing myself to nod. But inside, everything was cracking. The betrayal wasn't an accident. It wasn't just Derek whispering poison in her ear. Clara had chosen this path. She didn't just push me out, she plotted against me. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. My eyes burned, but no tears came. Not this time. Something else filled the emptiness inside me. Anger. But not wild, screaming anger. This was different. Cold. Steady. Sharp. I looked at Martin. My voice was low but firm. "She thinks she's already won." Martin frowned. "What are you going to do?" I turned my eyes back to the papers. I traced my finger across Clara's name where it didn't belong, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something close to strength. "She won't win this game," I whispered. When I left Martin's office, the air outside hit me like ice, but I didn't shiver. I walked slowly, carefully, each step heavier than the last. Clara and Derek thought they had written me off, thought I was broken, thought I would disappear into silence. But they were wrong, very wrong, and soon, they would know just how wrong. After leaving Martin's office, I didn't go straight home. I walked the streets for hours. My mind kept replaying Clara's words from those messages. Old baggage. Useless. The anger inside me wasn't burning anymore. It was cold, careful, and I knew I couldn't just sit around. If Clara wanted a fight, she was going to get one, but it would be on my terms. That night, I opened the box I'd carried with me since I moved. Old papers, receipts, and letters from years gone by. At first it felt like digging through dust, but as I laid them out, one by one, a picture started to form. Every dollar I had sacrificed for Clara, her tuition receipts, the loan I took to buy her first car, the money I sent when she claimed she needed help during her college days. Even the letters she wrote back then, full of gratitude, full of love. She once called me her hero. I held that letter in my hands, the ink faded, but the words clear. And now, she called me useless. My chest tightened, but instead of breaking, I pressed the letter flat on the table. This wasn't just paper anymore. This was evidence. The next morning, I made a call to someone I trusted. Eleanor. She wasn't just a lawyer, she was family to me. My late wife's cousin, sharp as ever, and loyal to the bone. When she picked up, her voice was warm. Lettered? It's been a while. I told her everything. About Clara. About Derek. About the papers Martin found. My voice shook a little, but I didn't hold back. She stayed quiet until I was done. Then she sighed. Lettered, listen carefully. You still hold full rights to that property. Clara can't take it without your consent. No matter what she says or does, the law is on your side. Hearing that felt like breathing again after drowning. I gripped the phone tighter. So she has nothing yet. Nothing, Eleanor said firmly. Unless you give it away. And I had no intention of doing that. After the call, I felt something shift inside me. For weeks I'd been carrying shame. I'd been walking around like I was already defeated. But now I knew I wasn't powerless. Still, I couldn't just sit back. Clara thought the world had forgotten me, that I was just an old man with no allies. She was wrong. Quietly, I started reaching out. Old friends, neighbors, people who had known me and Clara when she was younger. People who had seen how much I had given, how much I had sacrificed. One by one they answered. Some with surprise, some with warmth. Most of them still remembered. They remembered the man who worked double shifts, the man who carried his daughter's future on his shoulders. Martin stood by me too. He promised, if it ever came to it, he'd testify. He'd tell the truth about Clara's early years, how dependent she was on me, how none of what she had today would even exist without me. Piece by piece, I was building a shield. Quiet, careful. A shield Clara didn't even know existed. Late one night, I sat back in my chair, papers spread across my small table. Evidence of my love. Evidence of my sacrifice. Evidence of my rights. The betrayal still cut deep. Every page reminded me of the gap between the girl Clara once was and the woman she had become. My heart hurt. But for the first time since she threw me out, I felt something else. Power. Not the kind you shout about. Not the kind you wave around. The kind you hold in silence. Hidden. Waiting. And I knew. Soon I would use it. While I was gathering papers and building my quiet shield, Clara was living in another world. A world I had built for her, but one she now pretended I never existed in. Her days looked nothing like mine. She and Derek went shopping, eating at expensive restaurants, and driving around in a new car he proudly showed off. I heard about it from neighbors who still cared enough to call me. Leonard, one said, your daughter's living like a queen, and all the while they were already counting my property as theirs. One evening, Clara and Derek sat in their living room, sipping wine. I wasn't there, but through Eleanor and Martin I came to know exactly what they were planning. Derek leaned back, grinning. Once we get the property in our name, I'll start renovations right away. Tear down those old fences. Maybe even flip the whole thing. That land is worth way more than your father knows. Clara shifted in her seat. For a moment, a flicker of worry crossed her face. But what if he doesn't agree? You know my father. He can be stubborn. Derek laughed, waving her concern away. Stubborn? He's an old man living in a box apartment. He won't fight back. Trust me. He's finished. This is our time now. Clara hesitated. Deep inside, she knew me better than Derek did. She knew I wasn't as weak as I looked. For a split second, guilt pricked her chest. She remembered all the nights I stayed up, working to pay her school bills, the way I carried her on my shoulders when she was little. But just as quickly, she pushed those feelings down. She looked around the room, the glass table, the designer curtains, the life Derek had promised her, and the guilt disappeared. Comfort won over memory, so she smiled and clinked her glass against his. To our future, she said softly. And Derek raised his glass higher, to money, to freedom, to leaving the past behind. The two of them laughed, celebrating a victory they hadn't even earned yet. In the weeks that followed, Clara and Derek invited friends over. They threw dinners, boasting about upcoming changes to the property. Derek bragged about flipping the land for a massive profit. Clara joined in, nodding, smiling, pretending everything was already signed and sealed. Their friends congratulated them, raising glasses to a future they believed was guaranteed. None of them questioned whether I had agreed. None of them asked if I even knew. To them I was invisible, but they were wrong. That night, as laughter echoed inside their home, a soft knock came at the front door. At first nobody heard it over the music and chatter. Then it came again, gentle, deliberate. Clara frowned and got up. She opened the door, but no one was there. Only an envelope, lying on the porch. No name, no return address. Just her and Derek's world interrupted. She bent down, picked it up, and stared at it. For a moment, unease crept in. She felt the weight of the paper, the mystery of it. Who was it? Derek called from the living room. No one, Clara said quickly, hiding the envelope behind her. Just something left at the door. She slipped it onto the kitchen counter, unopened. The party went on. Laughter filled the air again. But inside Clara's chest, that flicker of worry returned. She tried to ignore it, tried to bury it, the way she had buried her guilt. But late that night, when everyone was gone, her eyes kept drifting back to that envelope. She didn't know it yet, but her world was about to crack. I wasn't there when Clara finally opened that envelope, but Eleanor had told me exactly what she sent. It was a warning, a reminder that every brick, every inch of soil, every paper tied to the property, was still in my name. Mine alone. Clara sat at her kitchen table, late that night, the party long over. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. She slid her finger under the flap and pulled the papers out. Her eyes moved quickly, but the more she read, the more her stomach turned. This letter serves as legal notice, it began, that the property located at Willow Creek remains under the sole ownership of Leonard Grayson. Any attempt to transfer, renovate, or sell the property without his consent will be considered fraudulent and prosecuted by law. Clara's face drained of color. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the page. For the first time she realized, I wasn't gone, I wasn't silent, I wasn't defeated. Derek strolled into the kitchen, still holding a half-empty glass of whiskey. "What's that?" he asked casually. Clara hesitated. She wanted to hide it, but her fingers betrayed her. The letter shook in her hands. It's from my father's lawyer," she whispered. Derek snatched the paper and skimmed it, his lips curled into a smirk. Then he burst out laughing, a deep, careless laugh that echoed through the room. "Are you kidding me?" he scoffed. "This is his move? A piece of paper? The old man thinks he can scare us with this nonsense. Please." Clara tried to match his confidence, forcing a small smile. "Yeah, maybe you're right." But her body told another story. She clenched her fist to stop the shaking. She swallowed hard, but the knot in her throat wouldn't go away. Derek waved the paper like it was trash. "He's desperate, weak, he can't touch us. We'll fight back. I'll get the best lawyer money can buy, and we'll crush him." Clara nodded, but deep down, she didn't feel as sure. She knew me. She knew I was quiet, patient, and deliberate. If I made a move, it wasn't empty. That night, sleep refused to come. Clara tossed and turned, her mind filled with images of losing everything, the house, the car, the so-called future Derek had promised. In her dreams she was back in that small apartment with me, only this time, I was the one turning her away. At one point, she jolted awake, heart racing. The room was dark. Derek was no longer in bed. She panicked for a second, then heard his voice from the other room. She got up and walked toward the living room. The glow of his phone lit up his face. He was pacing back and forth, whispering fast. "No, listen," he said sharply. "I don't care what his lawyer says. Find me someone who can challenge the deed. I don't want this dragging out. I want his name gone. Do you understand? Gone." Clara froze in the hallway. She realized Derek wasn't shaken by the letter. He was angry, determined to push harder. But Clara, she felt something else. Fear. She went back to bed, but her body stayed tense. The sound of Derek's voice on the phone echoed in her head, each word carving into her heart. For the first time she wondered if Derek had led her too far down a path she couldn't return from. And while she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, I was wide awake too, calmly waiting for my next move. While I was preparing my case in silence, something else was happening inside Claire's world. Something that would shake her far worse than any letter from me ever could. Derek had secrets, and like all secrets, they had a way of crawling out. It started with his phone. Claire never touched it before, but one evening, while Derek showered, a message lit up the screen. Curiosity won over fear. She picked it up. The name that appeared made her freeze. Melissa. An old flame Derek once swore was in the past. Her hand trembled as she tapped. What she found broke her world apart. "I'll be free soon," Derek's text read. "She's too naive to notice. Her father's property is the golden ticket. Once I cash that, we'll have the life we dreamed of." Claire's stomach dropped. Her vision blurred. In those few sentences, her marriage crumbled. Another message appeared. "Don't worry, babe. She's useful, but she's not you. She was just the path." Claire's chest tightened. Her throat burned. Every word screamed betrayal. She wasn't a wife to Derek. She was a stepping stone, a tool. She stumbled back, almost dropping the phone. Her knees shook as Derek walked out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, whistling like nothing was wrong. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing her pale face. Claire's voice cracked. "Who's Melissa?" His eyes narrowed for just a second, before his mask returned. He smirked, grabbing the phone from her weak grip. "You went through my phone?" he asked, coldly. "That's low, Clara. Don't twist this," she snapped, tears running down her face. "You called me naive. You said Dad's property was your golden ticket. You're using me, Derek. All this time using me." Derek chuckled, shaking his head like she was a child, throwing a tantrum. "You're imagining things. Those texts, just jokes. You're too emotional." But Clara wasn't blind anymore. His calm, mocking tone told her the truth. He wasn't even scared. He didn't love her. He never had. Her sobs turned into shaky anger. She grabbed her phone and dialed my number with trembling fingers. I answered after 2 rings. My voice was steady, cold. "Clara, Dad." Her words broke between breaths. "You were right, Derek. He's been lying. He's with someone else. He called me naive. He called you," she choked. "He called you a golden ticket." There was silence on my end. Then I spoke, calm and sharp as a knife. "I told you, Clara, people show who they really are when money is involved. You chose him. Now you see," she begged. "Dad, please, I don't know what to do. He's destroying everything." Before I could say more, Derek snatched the phone from her hand. He pressed it to his ear, his voice full of venom. "Listen, old man," he sneered. "Your daughter belongs to me now. Your property will too. You think you scare me with papers and threats? You won't save her. You won't save anything." I didn't respond. I let the silence hang heavy, colder than words. Then I ended the call. Clara stared at Derek, tears falling, her chest heaving with pain. But Derek just smirked at her, tossing the phone back like it was nothing. "See," he said calmly, "even your father knows. He can't save you now." And with that, the last illusion shattered. Clara was trapped, married to a man who never loved her, standing against the father she had betrayed. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. When Clara called me again, her voice was broken. She wasn't angry anymore. She was desperate. I could hear the tears in every word. "Dad," she cried. "Please, I don't know what to do. Derek lied. He's cheating. He's ruining everything. You have to help me." I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear. I didn't say a word. I just listened. My silence was heavier than anything I could have told her. "Why aren't you saying anything?" she screamed. "Do you enjoy this? Do you enjoy seeing me suffer?" Still I stayed quiet, and in that silence she broke down. Her sobs came hard, one after the other, like her whole world was crashing at once. Finally she whispered, weak and trembling, "Dad, please, I need you. I can't do this alone." I let out a long breath. My words were calm, steady, but sharp enough to cut. "Clara, when I walked out that night, when I smiled and left, I gave you my warning. You didn't hear it then, but you're hearing it now." She tried to argue, but her voice was small. I thought Derek loved me. I thought he was different." "That's the problem," I said softly. "You thought, but you never listened. Not to me, not to yourself. For a moment there was nothing but silence again. I could almost feel her sinking into the weight of my words. And while she cried, I was already moving behind the scenes. My lawyer, Eleanor, had been ready from the start. She drafted new clauses, sharper than knives, clauses that locked Clara out completely. Not just Derek, her too. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protection. Protecting what I had built, protecting my legacy from greed. I called Eleanor. Tighten everything. Every account, every asset, every property. I don't want a single crack left for them to crawl through. She didn't hesitate. Consider it done, Leonard. At the same time I pulled strings Clara didn't even know existed. Quiet financial moves. Old friends in the bank, in the county office. My name carried weight, and I used every ounce of it. By the time Derek made his next move, he would find nothing. No access, no control. Just locked doors. But Clara didn't know that yet. All she knew was my silence, my calm, and it drove her mad. Say something, she begged through the phone. Do you hate me that much? Am I nothing to you anymore? Her words cut deep. She was still my daughter. My blood. But she needed to feel this. She needed to understand that actions have consequences. Finally I spoke again. My voice was low. Final. Clara, sometimes losing is the only lesson you'll learn. I could hear her gasp, like I had just dropped her into cold water. Dad, please, she whispered. I can't lose everything, but I ended the call, and as I sat there in the quiet of my own home, I felt a storm brewing. Derek thought he had won. Clara thought she had lost. But me, I was just getting started, and soon, they would both see. I had been patient long enough. Derek thought he was clever. He thought he could hide his past, bury his mistakes, and use my daughter as his shield. But I knew the truth. And the truth has a way of breaking men like him. Quietly I moved. No noise, no threats, just precision. I gathered everything I had on Derek. Old records, shady deals, the kind of fraud that ruins a man's reputation forever. I didn't need to shout it to the world. I only needed to send it to the right people. So I did. I forwarded the files to his investors, one by one. No explanations, no comments, just proof. Proof that the man they trusted was a liar, a thief, and a fraud. And then I waited. It didn't take long. Within days the news broke. Derek's deal collapsed overnight. Investors pulled out. His phone wouldn't stop ringing, but not one call was friendly. Everyone wanted their money back. Clara called me in panic. Her voice shook. Dad, something's wrong. Derek says the investors are leaving. Did you do something? I stayed silent for a moment. Then I said, truth doesn't need my help. It speaks for itself. She didn't know what to say. I could hear Derek shouting in the background, his voice filled with rage. Tell him to stop. Tell him to fix this. Derek barked. But Clara knew. Deep down she knew Derek's empire was built on lies, and now it was crumbling. Derek scrambled. He made calls, begged for meetings, promised returns he could never give. But the walls were closing in. Every investor was gone. Every door slammed shut. And with no money coming in, debts came alive. Heavy debts. Debts he thought he could bury, once he married into my family's wealth. Now, with nothing left, he turned to Clara, dragging her down with him. Sell your jewelry, I heard him shout one night. We need cash. If you love me, you'll help me. Clara's voice was broken. I gave you everything, and you used me. You only wanted my father's money. Admit it. The silence after her words was sharp. Then Derek exploded. You were just a way in. That's all you ever were. And you still failed me. She gasped, like his words had slapped her harder than any hand could. Their fights grew uglier, louder, every night filled with screams and accusations, until one night, it ended. Derek stormed out. The door slammed so hard, the walls shook. Clara was left behind, sobbing on the floor, alone, broken. I wasn't there to see it, but I didn't need to be. I knew it was coming. That same night, I sat in my study. The TV flickered with breaking news. Derek's company, once his pride, was gone. Headlines shouted about fraud, betrayal, and collapse. His name was finished. His reputation destroyed. I leaned back in my chair. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. My face stayed still, unreadable. Because this wasn't about joy. It was about justice. And Derek was finally beginning to pay. After Derek left, Clara's world fell apart faster than she ever imagined. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter. The phone kept ringing. Debt collectors, angry voices, threats she couldn't handle. She tried to keep it together, but her hands shook every time she opened a letter. One afternoon, she sat at her vanity. Her jewelry box was open. One by one, she pulled out the pieces she once wore with pride. Necklaces Derek had gifted her. Rings she bought to impress friends. Diamonds that once sparkled at fancy dinners. She stared at them for a long time. Then, with tears running down her face, she whispered, "I never thought it would come to this." That same day she walked into a pawn shop. The man behind the counter didn't even look surprised. He just weighed the gold, tapped numbers on a calculator, and slid cash across the table. No sympathy, no kindness, just business. When Clara left, she held the money tight, like it might disappear. But inside, she felt smaller than ever. Word spread quickly. Old friends who once smiled at her stopped answering calls. Neighbors whispered when she walked by. Her perfect life had turned into gossip for everyone else. She thought she was better than us. Now look at her. Clara heard it, every word. And it cut deeper than she wanted to admit. One evening, she made a choice. She came to see me. I was sitting by the window in my apartment when I saw her outside. She stood there for a long time, staring at the door. Her eyes red, her face tired. She looked nothing like the daughter who once laughed at my warnings. Her hand lifted. For a moment I thought she might knock, but then it dropped. Instead she sat down on the steps. She buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook as she cried. Quiet at first, then louder. The kind of crying that comes from the soul. I watched from the window. My heart tightened. She was my daughter, no matter what she had done. Part of me wanted to rush down, hold her, tell her everything would be okay. But I didn't move, because I knew if I gave in now she would never learn. After a while, Clara stood up. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and walked away. Shoulders slumped, head low. The shame was heavy on her. I stayed by the window, watching until she disappeared into the night. Later I sat at my desk. I opened my journal, the same one I had kept for years. I began to write. My pen scratched against the paper, words filled with pain and reflection. Blood ties are strong, I wrote, but trust once broken is almost impossible to rebuild. A child may betray a parent, but the wound never truly heals. Only time and truth can show if love is stronger than pride. For the first time in years, my hand trembled as I wrote those words. Then suddenly, my phone rang. I frowned. It was late. Too late for a casual call. When I answered, Eleanor's voice came through, but it wasn't calm, not like usual. She sounded sharp, alarmed. "Leonard," she said quickly, "something's happened. You need to hear this." My chest tightened. Whatever it was, I knew it wasn't good. And in that moment I realized Clara's tears weren't the end of the storm. They were only the beginning. I thought Derek was finished. His company was gone. His reputation ruined. Clara left in tears. I believed the storm had finally passed, but I was wrong. One morning, a thick envelope arrived at my door. I opened it slowly, my hand steady, but my heart already bracing for trouble. Inside was a lawsuit, filed by Derek, against me. He claimed I had coerced Clara. He said I manipulated her, used money to control her life, and forced her into financial traps. Lies. Every single word a lie. But it was written in cold legal language, signed and stamped by the court. For a moment I just sat there in silence. I could almost hear Derek laughing in the shadows. When Clara found out, she panicked. She came running, her eyes wide, her voice shaking. "Dad, I swear I didn't know he'd do this. I didn't." I raised my hand to stop her. "Clara, I know you didn't file it, but he's using you." Again, she covered her face. Tears slipped through her fingers. I don't know what to do. And that's when it hit me. Derek wasn't just coming for me. He was coming through her. He wanted me to bleed. and he was using my daughter as the weapon. The lawsuit wasn't about truth. It was about humiliation. It was about dragging my name into the dirt. Eleanor read through the papers carefully, her face tight. She placed them on my desk and looked me straight in the eyes. "Leonard, this isn't just about money. If this case moves forward, they'll question your pension, your reputation. Everything you've built could collapse." Her words landed like heavy stones on my chest. For years I stood strong. I never doubted myself. Not once. But that night, sitting alone, I felt it, the first crack of doubt. What if he actually ruined me? What if the world believed his lies? I walked to the cabinet where I kept my late wife's photo. I picked it up. Her smile still soft, her eyes still kind. I held the frame tight, like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. "Guide me," I whispered. My voice broke in the quiet room. "Tell me what to do. I'm tired, but I can't lose now." For the first time in years I felt weak. The weight of betrayal, the endless fight, the loneliness, it all pressed down on me. But as I stared at her face, I knew one thing: Derek wanted me broken. He wanted me to quit, and that was something I could never give him. Still, deep inside, the fear grew. This wasn't a battle of fists or business anymore. This was the law. A game where truth wasn't enough, where lies, if told the right way, could destroy everything. That night, I sat in silence until the dawn light broke through the curtains. My heart was heavy, my mind restless. I knew the war with Derek had just entered its most dangerous stage, and the question now was simple: would I survive it, or lose everything I still had left? I didn't sleep much after that night. Derek thought he had me cornered. He believed his lies would destroy me, but I wasn't going to let that happen. The next morning, I sat at my desk, pulling out old files, emails, contracts, everything I had kept over the years. Proof. Evidence of Derek's fraud, his scams, his dirty deals. Every paper felt heavy in my hands, like weapons I had been saving for this very moment. Eleanor came by. She looked at the stack on my table and gave a sharp nod. "This is it," she said. "This is how we bury him in court." Her voice gave me strength. For the first time since the lawsuit, I felt like myself again. But there was one piece missing. Clara. She had stayed silent too long, caught between us. I didn't know if she had the courage to face Derek in public. When I called her, her voice was low, almost broken. "Dad, I don't want to testify. I don't want the world to see me like this." I sighed. My heart hurt hearing her. "Clara, listen, he's using you. He's dragging you down with him. The only way to end this is to tell the truth, not for me, for yourself." There was a long silence on the phone, then a soft sob. Finally she whispered, "I'll do it." The day of court came. The air inside the room was thick, heavy. Derek sat across the aisle, sharp suit, fake smile, oozing confidence. He looked at me like I was nothing. The judge entered. We all rose. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. Derek's lawyer started first. They painted me as a manipulator, a bitter old man who ruined his daughter's life. Derek even spoke, his voice smooth, almost charming. He acted like he was the victim, like I was the monster. I kept my eyes on the judge, not on him. I knew our turn was coming. Eleanor stood and began laying out the files, piece by piece: fraudulent contracts, forged signatures, bank transfers that led back to Derek. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Derek's smile began to fade, and then Clara walked in. Her hands shook as she took the stand. She couldn't even look at me at first, but then she raised her head, voice trembling but clear. "Your Honor," she said, "Derek used me. He used my father's trust. I thought I was in love, but I was blind. He made me turn against my own family. I see it now, and I regret every choice I made." Her words cut through the room. Derek's face went pale. He shifted in his chair, his mask cracking. Eleanor asked her one final question. "Clara, did your father ever force you financially? Did he ever coerce you?" Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Never. My father gave me everything. I was the one who betrayed him." The room fell silent. Even the judge leaned back, expression heavy. Finally, the gavel came down. "Case dismissed." The claims against Mr. Grayson are unfounded. And Mr. Derek Wallace, the judge's voice turned hard, is under investigation for fraud. Bailiffs, take him into custody. The sound of metal cuffs clicking around Derek's wrists echoed like music. He turned his head toward me, his eyes burning with pure hatred. But I didn't flinch. I just stared back, calm, steady. This time he was the one being dragged away. As they let him out, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief, not joy, not triumph, just peace. The war wasn't over yet, but the end was finally in sight. And deep down I knew one thing. The final act of justice was still waiting. When the judge's gavel came down, I finally exhaled. The sound echoed in that silent courtroom like thunder. Derek's lies had been torn apart, piece by piece. His fake lawsuit, his charm, his manipulation. None of it worked. The judge dismissed every claim. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. As I stood, people around me whispered. Some looked at Derek, now red-faced, his hands shaking as two officers moved closer. Others looked at me. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just stood tall because dignity doesn't need noise. I walked out of that courtroom slowly, my head high, my steps steady. For months Derek tried to crush me. He wanted my pension, my peace, my very name. But as I pushed open those heavy doors, the sunlight spilled onto my face. Warm, steady, almost like a blessing. I had survived. Then I heard it. "Dad, wait," Clara's voice. I froze for a moment, then turned. She was rushing down the courthouse steps, her hair messy, her face wet with tears. She looked so small in that moment, so broken. She grabbed my arm like she was a little girl again. "Please," she whispered, breathless. "Please forgive me. I didn't see it. I didn't see who Derek really was. I chose him over you. I destroyed everything." Her words cut through me. My own daughter, the one I raised, the one I protected, standing here begging. A part of me wanted to pull her close and end it right there. But another part, the part of me she had shattered, wasn't ready. I looked her in the eye. My voice was calm but firm. "Clara, forgiveness isn't just words. Respect isn't given. It's earned. Even by a daughter." Her lips trembled. She shook her head, tears falling harder. Then right there on the courthouse steps she dropped to her knees. People stopped to watch, whispering, staring, but she didn't care. "I'll earn it," she cried. "I swear, Dad. I'll spend the rest of my life earning it." The sound of her sobs echoed in my ears. My heart ached. I wanted to believe her. But wounds like mine don't heal in one day. I bent slightly, placed my hand on her shoulder, and held it there for a moment. "I hope you mean that," I told her softly. Then I stepped back. She reached for me again, but I turned and walked away. Her cries followed me, carried by the city noise, digging into me with every step. But I didn't stop. Sometimes love means walking away. The walk back to my small apartment felt long, heavy, but it also felt right. I wasn't slamming the door on her forever. I was showing her something she had to learn, that broken trust can't be patched with tears alone. When I reached home, I opened the door. The silence inside used to feel like punishment. Now it felt like peace. I sat in my chair, looked up at the photo of my late wife on the wall and whispered, "It's over. He can't hurt us anymore." For the first time in years, I felt calm. Derek was gone. Clara had seen the truth. And I still had myself, my name, my dignity, my strength. That's when it hit me. Family can cut the deepest wounds, but true strength is knowing when to close the door. And that's what I had done. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments.